Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 33rd episode of Stories of Service, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today we have a very special episode. It is my first pre-recorded episode because, as you guys can see back here, I am in a hotel room with sort of unstable Wi-Fi. And so don't always know if I can go on live, but as Dr. Karen will tell you, you always adjust and you make it work. And you, as she says, you make it happen. So we're making this podcast happen today. I'm going to read you a little bit about her bio, and then we're just going to get right into the questions. So Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, she's a living example that a dream deferred, not a dream denied. She transformed her life from a teenage bride to a well-known global powerhouse. She has motivated thousands of female professionals to elevate their competencies and pursue career goals that they once thought was dead or impossible. Her blueprint is simple. No excuses. Make it happen. Dr. Pruden has decades of experience in leadership, influencing others through global speaking, coaching, workshops, and authoring 11 Amazon #1 best-selling books. Dr. Pruden works as a Chief Human Resources Officer for Virginia University. She is the CEO of Pruden Global Business Solutions Consulting and the CEO founder of the Sister Leaders Conference. She is also the international creator and TV host for Leadership is Served, which is a candid, uncensored conversation between two leaders that shares lessons learned in unsuccessful and successful applications of leadership competencies in various industries. She's been interviewed on The Kim Jacobs Show, Believe in Your Dreams Television, Roland Martin Unfiltered, ABC, NBC, and CBS affiliates. She's a featured speaker at the Virginia Society for Human Resource Management, Society for Diversity, Black Wall Street, SpeakerCon, Virginia Commonwealth University, Norfolk State University, Thomas Nelson Community College, Christopher Newport University, Global Fluency, Empowering Her, NAACP, You Are Enough Conference, sponsored by Les Brown and Dr. Cheryl Wood, the Pensacola Peninsula Chamber of Commerce, Black Brand. Dr. Pruden has graced the same conference stages as Sean Fair, Lisa Nichols, Gloria Mayfield Banks, Dr. George Fraser, Nikki Woods, and Carrie Murphy. She serves on several private and government committees, namely the Legacy Council of Black Brand, MomAdvocate LLC, City of Virginia Beach Police Citizen Recruiting Task Force, City of Virginia Beach's Mayor's African American Roundtable, the City of Virginia Beach Police and Community Relations Panel, Greater Williamsburg Tourism and Alliance Education Committee, Mayor's Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessible Commission, the African American Political Action Council, Junior Achievement of Hampton Roads, Citizen Review Task Force, and the Virginia Beach Public Schools Ad Hoc Achievable Dreamers Academy Committee. As you can tell, she's not one to be put in a box. She graduated from Yale University Women's Leadership Program and exposed her to the fact that there's a community of challenging businesses and people issues, even internationally. No longer known as a teenage bride, she is now known as the C-Suite career elevation expert, and she uses her education and expansive experience to assist female professionals in corporate and entrepreneurship. Nationally recognized conference speaker and Amazon national and international author, her hottest publication is Pruden Principles, 10 Strategies to Propel Women to the C-Suite. She was recognized by the governor of Northam for her commitment to work in equality, diversion, and inclusion. She is an award-winning, multifaceted entrepreneur who helps the female sister leader community achieve prosperity through developing competencies to excel in career and financial satisfaction. Welcome, Dr. Karen.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, that was a mouthful.
But it's you. It's everything.
It is.
And it's so much to be proud of. And so the first thing that I want to start off with is that you mentioned that you were a child bride, and I really want to go back. I want to go back to your teenage years and where you were when you were high school, about to become a young adult, and where what your life was looking like during that time.
Well, in my senior year in high school, my life was kind of mapped out. I had been saying, and I was conditioned that I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to be a lawyer since kindergarten. So I was on my way to law school. And I was also experiencing what is known as first love. And that is more powerful than any illegal drug. And so at the at graduation, I was scheduled that August, graduated in June. I was scheduled to go south, and my first boyfriend at the time was scheduled to go north, and we just could not let that happen. And so we jumped up and got married.
Oh, wow.
And so that kind of, and so we didn't pursue either of our plans, which were to go to college. And so we got married and started a family shortly after that, and had a couple of children back to back, and life happened. And then we realized we were kind of in over our head, marriage, young, didn't really know what we were getting into, but now we're parents. So while we're trying to figure out the marriage thing, now we also mother and father, and the responsibilities financially as well as emotionally and physically that are involved with having a growing family, because I had 3 children back to back.
Wow.
And so, about 5 years into the marriage, I found myself getting a divorce, and my children were 3, 2, and 1 at that time. And so that is when I really had to reinvent myself and kind of lean into my faith, as well as I had a big support system because I had a very promising future. And so I had a big support system who were committed to me getting back on track towards that promising future.
Wow. Wow. So you must have felt like when all that stuff was happening, like, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought my life was. This is how things were going to be. And who can you tell me a little bit about some of those people in those support network that helped you get through it?
Yeah, absolutely. My mother-in-law was very instrumental. There's like, we all have like a million stories in our lifetime. We have these sub stories. And so in addition to me getting married straight out of high school, I came from a very working class family. We kind of worked our way up economically, sociably. My husband came from a very affluent family. So his family had what is called money. People say refer to family as family with money. And so when we got a divorce, his mother wanted to ensure that her grandkids could be put on the right path. I'll put it like that. And so that part of that would be for me to go ahead and pursue the goals that I gave up for marriage. And so my mother-in-law she was a stay-at-home mother, but she took on my 3 children through my bachelor's degree, through my master's degree, through my doctorate. A lot of times I worked 2 jobs and went to school. And so to keep me from switching my small children who were not school age at the time from babysitter to babysitter, she was my sitter per se.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so she committed to keeping my children in what she called a safe and stable environment while I went to school and did all the things that I was supposed to do, and I did. And my mother-in-law and my father-in-law I just say that they were just angels. They were a little bit guilty that the marriage didn't work out because some things that had to do with their son. And so, but without them, I'm not sure where I would be, because my family, as a working family, I didn't have anyone in my family who can stay home and take care of my kids.
Right. And a lot of families just don't have that. Doesn't matter how much love there's there. They just don't have somebody that can do that.
Yes. So because my husband's family had money per se, and they had individuals who were stay-at-home individuals, I benefited from that. And I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful for that.
What an opportunity. And because at first you're probably just you're climbing the ladder, you're working through your career and you're in human resources, and that was your calling. And what made the shift from, okay, I'm just going to go in, do my 9 to 5, move up in the system, to I'm going to write 11 novels. I'm going to be a part of a zillion boards that I can't even pronounce properly. Like, I'm going to do everything there is to do in the neighborhood to give back. I mean, what was it were you always like that? Or did you use the time to raise your children and then get to a certain level in your career and say, okay, now I'm ready to branch? Like, how did you do that?
No, I've always been that person, which is why I was kind of looked at as little lawyer when I was young. I was always the advocate, you know. I was the one that had the little kids standing behind me saying, you know, Teresa said, and this is what Teresa wants, you know. And so I was always the advocate for other people. I've always been that way. I didn't decide to kind of write my story or stories until later at life. My first publication was my dissertation for my doctorate. Before that, I was writing poems, just poems, and they were just for me. I did have one published, but most of them were just for me. And it was kind of cathartic. You know, for me, they were kind of my therapy. You know, some people journal. I wrote poems when I was young about what I was feeling and what I was going through, and so I never thought about publishing that. But after I got my dissertation published, I learned the power of telling your story with my first anthology. The first anthology that I participated in was Women Inspiring Nations. And in that book, it was a whole bunch of different women telling different stories. And after I was part of that book and read the different stories that the women had, I realized that we all have like hundreds of stories. We have all these sub stories in life. And it's just when we're ready to tell them, you know, then we can kind of document them through publication. Some of them we're still kind of healing through, so we may not be ready to tell them at that moment. But for those stories that you've healed your way through and you're ready to share, we have a lot, and other people benefit from us telling our story, because although we may feel like or felt like we were the only one going through that situation, like for me, by the time I was 23 years old, I was marriage falling apart, and I had children 3, 2, and 1 with just a high school degree. You know, there are women who pick love over everything else in life, and then it didn't work out. And so by me sharing my story, it helps people see that there is another side to it, as long as you do the work. And that's critical, to do the work. But and that's to anything that you go through in life. I don't care what it is, whatever the situation is. If someone shares the story, generally they're on the other side of that, and it helps people see the other side of it.
Absolutely. And you're right. You have to be at a certain place where you're ready to share those parts of the stories. But what I find too is that when you share your story, even if it's not, and everybody thinks that, you know, what they're sharing might not be that much. I mean, I know I sometimes think that, but what I learn is that even the parts that I share, there's so many other people that really aren't ready to even share that. And so by you sharing what you can, when you can, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. It doesn't mean that you just blurt out everything that has ever happened to you and start, you know, and never ever call people under the bus or do anything, because it's your story and it's about your journey. And there's ways to share your story in a way that you won't, you know, re-traumatize yourself or re-traumatize family members or other people. And I think a lot of people don't understand that there is a path to do that. And so by you, like you said, by sharing what has happened to you, how you went through it, you're inspiring somebody else to not only know what the steps are to get through that, but to also do the same and share a similar story in their lives. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's definitely so much value to that. So how did you get on the path to, you wrote what was your dissertation on?
My dissertation was on how volunteers are viewed by paid workers in agencies. And I did a study in the Virginia Beach Department of Social Services on the views of paid workers versus volunteers. You know, did they think that their job was in jeopardy, or how did they look at them as valuable assets to the agency? And so it kind of HR related, because staffing and retention and all that stuff has to do with HR. And so it was in that vein, but it also has a lot to do with how we feel secure in our career and our roles. And when we have someone else who is introduced into the workplace and they could be more qualified than us, you know, because a lot of volunteers are retirees. They had a career before, you know, and it's how do we feel about that, and sometimes it brings out people's insecurities and different things like that. And so it was a very interesting study. And so, but that is what I did my dissertation on.
Wow. And then, so you did the poems, you did the dissertation, and then how soon after that did you start doing the books?
Well, I published my dissertation, and then the very next year is when I wrote my very first anthology, and I did five. I participated in like 5 anthologies by Dr. Cheryl Wood. She was also my business coach, and so I participated in her anthologies, and then I started doing anthologies myself because I wanted to do it from a work-related perspective of women overcoming whatever barrier that we overcome. Because I am a female leadership coach, I wanted to start telling the stories of women overcoming whatever that barrier, fill in the blank with that barrier.
Right. And you really introduced me to a model, like a model that we all can do as people who share stories, of the whole anthology model. And a lot of people are doing that. So I'm curious, from your perspective, how important was it for you to start this journey by having a coach?
Oh, I think it's extremely important to have someone who has walked the path that maybe you did not know exist or that you desire. I did not. When I first started my business, I started my business because someone told me that I needed to formalize it. And I always listen to people who I think are a couple of steps ahead of me. And they said, this is not a hobby, because my name was going around the circuit and people were referring me. And so they were like, this is not a hobby. You need to formalize it. You need to get a business license. You need to declare your income on your taxes so that when you go in to buy something, if you're making $200,000 a year, you can show you're making $200,000 a year. And so I need you to formalize it. And so when I got that information, I did formalize my business. I got my employer identification number. And that helped me establish my business formally. I was only then just doing coaching. That was it. I was just doing coaching. I was doing individual, group, and a couple of webinars. My business has expanded greatly since then. I'm 7 years into business now. So now not only do I do coaching, I do conferences, I do webinars, I do anthologies. Now I own a TV station, Boss Brand and Business Television, that's airing in over 200 countries. And so my business has really expanded. But my goal is always the same, to reach as many women where they are so that I can help educate them and help facilitate them having career and financial satisfaction. My goal is the same. I have a number of methodologies, right? But the goal is still the same.
Yeah, you have a core message, Karen. I mean, Dr. Karen, you have this like very, very specific message. And I think that's what makes your brand so compelling, is because it's very simple. And I think that what you do is you inspire people to believe that they can do it too. Like, just listening to you, I'm like, I know that this is in the realm of the possible, to take the things that I do day to day and one day take them to the level that you've taken them, because you show that it's possible. It doesn't have to be something oh, if I only did this or that. No, just like you said, get a business, an EIN number, start learning how to declare it tax wise, start understanding the legalities of it. And so the fact that you found people that were a little ahead of where you were makes all the difference. And then now you're in a place where you can start to pay that forward and give back to others. How has that experience been for you, to be able to take the things that people imparted on you, and now to go, shoot, I'm in the position now where I got this. It isn't just something I'm learning about. I can teach another person.
It's humbling. I actually am in 3 anthologies of my co-authors who used to be in my anthologies. I'm like the courtesy co-author. They was like, oh, Dr. Pruden, you got to be in my, because I got started from you. So, but right now I'm currently in, and then I'm also interviewing with people that I met through my anthology, such as yourself. I also have other individuals who have other shows. I love it. I love it because I know all of you will share your experience, and then other individuals will, through you, see that they can do it too. And it's just like a ripple effect. It'll be a ripple effect. And then we have all of these women just doing their thing internationally. You know,
Right.
It's very humbling for me. And I like the fact that the people who I've come in contact with are so unselfish that they too share information. So they are creating leaders, they're creating entrepreneurs, they're creating new authors, and they don't even know it until everything comes into fruition. So I love it.
It's amazing. And I'll tell you, like, you just giving me this offer about, I'd say it was about a year ago, I'd say, is when we first started communicating. And it really opened my eyes to like what's possible. Because I think up until that point, I was just doing a lot of, social media posts that were getting a lot of traction. And I was sharing my story through the platforms I'm on and doing some blogs infrequently. But I didn't think that I had it in me to just go ahead and launch the podcast. And so you really gave me that confidence to say, wait a minute, I can do this. I got it. And, ever since then, now you're my 33rd guest. And I know, and I see the potential in all of this. I know that it's just going to continue to grow, and I'm just going to continue to take it to the next level. And I have you to thank as one of the people that helped me get there, because it really is daunting if you try to think, like, you couldn't think, obviously, when you started this, you didn't think it was going to turn into a conference, a TV show, 11 books, all these other things. But you said, okay, I'm just going to start a coaching business, and I'm going to, like you said, get an EIN number, and I'm going to just start doing the legalities of having a business, because I'm starting to become very well known. And I want to make sure that I'm formalizing this into an actual craft that I can take with me no matter what happens. Where do you draw the line? I'm curious about when you decide, and for yourself personally, when you would do the business full time versus working your day to day. How do you decide that?
And I've pondered that.
Yeah, you're 7 years into this.
Yeah, I've pondered that. I don't know. I just feel like I would know when it's time to step out of my corporate job. I just feel like I would know. Right now, I'm having fun doing both.
Yeah.
And both are able to coexist. But there may come a time where my corporate job, because I am a C-suite executive,
right,
be so demanding that I won't be able to travel to speak and do the things that I really desire to do. And those things are also, not only is it my business, but it's part of my mental health.
Right, it is.
And so since I haven't reached that point yet, but I know that there will come a time when that point, as I get bigger and bigger. And, I actually had someone turn to me at a conference I was at a couple of months ago and say, do you still work as a CHRO? And I was like, yes, I'm still a CHRO. And she's like, I see you everywhere. And I'm able to balance that now. So I think when it comes to the point where I'm not able to balance it, and I hate to get to the point where I'm forced to choose, but if I am forced to choose, I would choose my entrepreneurship over my corporate. I'm in my 4th quarter of my corporate life. I've been doing this for 30 years. So I'm in my 4th quarter. My entrepreneurship, I can do that to my grave as long as I keep my health.
Yeah, I know how you feel. Yeah,
so that's,
I'm in the same place right now.
That's my second act. And so if you force me to pick my first act over my second act is going to win out, because my second act is part of my future, part of my legacy of impacting others. And so I would pick my second act over my first act. But right now I'm having fun balancing in it. It's to the point that even my corporate boss, when he's trying to schedule a meeting, he'll say, are you working Thursday? Yeah, I'm working Thursday. Oh, okay. I want to call a meeting, because I do manage to get all of it done. And another thing with being in senior leadership in senior leadership, you're not an hourly worker. You just have to get the job done. And I don't work with my hands. I work with my head, my brain. And as long as they can access my brain, whether it's through teleworking or whether it's through me going into the office to get information, I'm able to kind of balance it out. So I'm not required to go into a particular building to successfully do all of the tasks of my job. And that is the great thing about living in the age that we live in now. You know, they can call me on the phone. I could say I'm teleworking and I could be in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And I live
Right.
in Virginia, you know, and they ask me a question or whatever, and I can access the company systems externally. You know, we live in a wonderful time now where you can kind of enjoy the two lives and kind of hold off and decide when you want to pick one over the other.
You bring up such a great point. I mean, and I completely relate to what you're saying because I'm in the same place in my life where I feel like I'm in the fourth quarter and sort of just riding out the rest of this time, but making the most of it because, like you, I'm still having fun and getting opportunities like the one I'm in now in Germany, being a part of a very important mission. And so it does get to that place where you think at some point you may have to decide, but what you have decided to do and what I do as well is you're picking that first act while you're still working the fourth act. You're not, so many people, especially in the military, we hear about, they don't start to pick their second act until they're in like the transition phase, which is usually about a year before they get out. That's when they're like active on LinkedIn. And that's when they start to get into the job market. And I want to know, what is your advice for people who are, like you say, C-suite executives, or they're in that place? Do you suggest that they do kind of they start to lay down maybe that foundation a little bit earlier,
or at least think about it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least think about it, and think about, after you think about it, whatever it is, think about whatever resources that are needed to complete whatever it is. You know, what the qualifications are, what financial resources, what time resources, if there's any certifications or education that's involved in whatever it is you want to do. If you need an expansive network to be successful in what it is, then you may want to go ahead and start working on your network while you're in the fourth quarter.
Right.
You know, so you have to at least think about it and think about what the requirements are, so you can just move effortlessly from your fourth quarter of your first act to your first quarter of your second act. And so I would say at least think about it. And if you can do it, you know, because what you think you want to do, you get into it and you find out, nope, don't want to do that. You know, hence me, I got all the way to law school and decided I don't want to be a lawyer.
Wow. I didn't know that. So you actually got all
the way to law school and decided I was in my 30s. I was already in management and human resources. And someone turned to me in law school and said, so are you gonna open up your own practice when you graduate from law school? And I'm like, no. I like HR. But for me, I'm very goal oriented. That was the last thing on my list that I had not accomplished. I had accomplished everything else I wanted to accomplish in life. And I have been saying since I was a little Karen in kindergarten that I was going to be a lawyer. And so I made it all the way to law school and realized I don't want to be a lawyer. And so I talked to a counselor and I made the pivot. I lost a lot of credit hours, but I made the pivot from a Juris Doctorate to a doctorate of management and organizational leadership, which was more compatible with my business background and my HR background. And so, but yeah, I got all the way to law school. So for people who are looking at their second act, you're thinking you want to do this, but if you don't dip your toe in the water, you may not realize that you really don't want to do that until you actually get into it. So why not dip your toe in the water while you're at the fourth quarter, so that you can find out if this is something you really want to do, because you may have to pivot in thought about what your next act is.
Right. It is important to do that. And you're right, because I played around with so many different things like, oh, do I want to start a magazine? Do I want to be a blogger? And podcasting has now seemed to be the thing. You know, I've been at it for almost a year now. In April, it'll be 1 year. And I've stayed consistent with it because I just really enjoy it. I love having these conversations, and it just exposes me to people that I think I would never otherwise get a chance to have these more in-depth conversations. And I just love it. And my father's a broadcaster, and it runs in our family to just kind of have these very intellectually driven conversations. And that was kind of the way I was raised. And so it's just such a rewarding opportunity to be able to do this. So
and you can do it from Germany.
Right. Like I can still sit it up
about the times that we're living in. You love it, and you can do it without walls. Wherever you go, you can still open up your computer and still do a podcast.
Absolutely. And I'm at a place now, Dr. Karen, where I have more guests that want to be on and opportunities to do shows than I managed to host. So I figure like that's a good sign and a good problem to have. And so, I think I'm onto something, and I'm just going to keep on with it because it's so rewarding for me and I enjoy it so much. So what kind of advice would you have for really anybody? I know that your focus is mostly women, but really anyone who doesn't, especially since you're in human resources, who doesn't know what they want to do. They don't know what the next quarter is. How can they help figure that out?
Well, you might not know what you want to do, but what do you like to do?
Mm-hmm.
And figure out if you can make money from what you like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it may not be totally whatever it is, it may not be the whole thing that you can make money from, but you maybe can make money from a part of it. But you have to figure out what you like to do first, because when you're going into your second act, after you've invested, I don't know, the average person works if you work a 40-hour work week for about 20 plus years, it's 96,000 hours annually, for over a lifetime, 96,000 over a lifetime that you will work. So for your second act, it has to be something that you like.
Yeah.
Because not everybody retire from jobs that they like.
Right.
So think about if your first act was something that was just put your kids through school. You just did it because you needed to do it. You wasn't really passionate about it, but it served a purpose in your life, whether it was to take care of your family. For your second act, you want it to be twofold. You want your second act to keep the lights on, but you want to have that light on in your head as well. You want to be able to get up without an alarm clock. You want to be passionate about it. You don't want it to be forced, so I would tell people to figure out what you like to do first, and then let's talk about how we can monetize it so that you can get paid, so that you can do it possibly full time. And the good thing about people who have had a career before, and this is their second act, they usually have some type of money coming in from the first act. And so your second act does not have to fully substantiate your lifestyle.
Right. Absolutely. And I think this is a good thing, even for people in their late teens and early 20s to think about. Like, I think there's a lot to be said about doing your time and doing those jobs sometimes that you don't enjoy doing, and being a part of a team that is working together towards a common cause. And then, like you say, you get to about your 40s and your 50s and you go, okay, I still want to be a part of the workforce, but I just want to show up in a different way. How do I create that path for myself? And that's a great way to look at it. Was there anything that you, looking back on your life, that you think you would have done differently? Not so much what happened in your late teens, but as you were in your 30s and your 40s and you were building your career, anything that you think you would have done differently that you can advise people now to say, okay, I probably should have done this or that? Do you have any regrets or anything?
Well, not regrets, because I look at everything as learning experiences. So not necessarily regrets, but I was with an employer for 14 years. And me leaving that employer had a lot to do with me being tapped on the shoulder and say, hey, you're going to be your boss's successor. And so when it came to, she was supposed to retire within a year, and then she didn't. And then I hung around, and then there was no conversation. And then she started moving some of her tasks over to me. And there still was no conversation about when she was going to retire. And so after 2.5 years of being tapped on the shoulder saying that you're going to be the boss when your boss retire, your boss did not retire. And me working in HR, I know that you can't force anyone to retire. So you can't even really bring up the conversation. I ended up leaving the employer, a job that I love and a position that I love, because I was ready to go to the next level. And the lesson that I learned from that is that you have to be in control of your career. Do not allow someone else to be in control of your career. And so I went and got a leadership position with another company, because at that point, now I am a secretly disgruntled employee.
Sure.
for a job that I loved, all because she didn't know how to have the conversation with me, even though it was obvious she wasn't ready to retire. So what I teach and coach people about is you have to be the driver. You have to be in the driver's seat when it comes to your career.
You do.
And so you have to make the difficult decisions about how long you're going to stay where. You need to make sure that you're valued when you are there. And you have to make the difficult decision about when it's time to go, even though you love what you're doing. You know, because I was ready to go to the next level. And women, since I'm a female coach, and I can only speak because I've worked with more women than men, and I do work with both, but technically I'm a female coach. Women are very loyal. We will stay with an employer who we feel is underpaying us, because we like the people we work with and we like the job, that has no opportunities for promotion, way longer than most men have. And this is statistical research, as people have done studies on this. Men will move on. They'll cut the cord and they'll move on. Women, we are extremely loyal. And so I teach my clients about recognizing when you're being loyal to an employer and kind of disloyal to yourself and your own goals and ambitions. And
yeah, that's something I never thought about.
And you have to switch it. You got to switch the power. You got to switch the power back to yourself. And that was a difficult decision I made. When I left that job, I loved that job. I loved the company. I have been with it for 14 years, but I was ready to move up. And it was still several years after I left that my boss was still there.
Wow. And then really all that person could have done was better communicate what their intentions really were.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have kept you on the hook like that. But it was absolutely stringing you along because they wanted to keep you there, and they knew that you needed that carrot to just stay on, and then you never got it. And it's like, well, you just should have just been honest to begin with. And,
absolutely.
And even if you guys had to cut ties, so be it, because it was about what you need, what you were ready for next. And you were ready to take on those roles. And yeah, I think that's a tough thing, I think, for people to do, because they like the team, they like the work, but they know that they're ready to do something that's a little bit more, prominent, or be in a more of a leadership position. And it's difficult to do that. Is there anything else, as I'm just kind of wrapping up all my questions, but this has been such an amazing conversation, and I just so enjoy talking to you, Karen, Dr. Karen. I really do. I
love you, Teresa. I love you. I love watching you. I love reading about you. I'm one of your biggest fans on social media. It's just an honor. It's just an honor to be on the other side of your interview table.
Well, thank you so much. Anything else that you want to mention that I just didn't ask, or anything you've got coming up? Anything you'd like to promote?
Well, I always have a bunch of stuff going on. So I'm launching the TV channel, which is Boss Brand and Business TV channel. It'll be on every type of digital television you can think of. And so what I hope to do with the television channel, not only to increase my footprint internationally and touch international women, the same thing I did when I took the leadership class at Yale. I wanted to find out, is there a difference between U.S. and international individuals? And I found out no. And so I want to get into the stories of women in other countries, what they're going through, recognizing that some countries, they can't even talk.
Right.
Come to,
Or good job.
they can't even talk. But for those that can, and let's talk about the commonalities between women in the workplace, women in entrepreneurship, women who want financial satisfaction or financial stability, women who want career entrepreneurship satisfaction and stability. And let's talk about the common lanes, because I believe that we're more alike than different. And so I am so excited about moving into television to be able to be a vehicle for other women to tell their stories and possibly facilitate their dreams of being on television, but as well as to help the world see that we're more alike than different, even internationally. And a lot of people don't believe that.
I love it. I love it. I think that everybody, we all have in our own way, our unique cultures and traditions. But I think the core of humanity is very common. And, and I do a lot of traveling, obviously being in the military. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that people are the same. People just, they want love. They want empowerment. They want to feel like they're making a difference. And I think that when you can tap into that shared humanity, it's a really powerful thing. So thank you so much, Dr. Karen. This has been so
for having me. It's been so much fun.
All right, folks, I'm going to close out the call, but thank you all for joining us. And I will try to do these even out here because don't know how long I'll be here. I got one other call coming up, but hopefully I'll get us to schedule a few more in there. But take care. Have a wonderful day wherever you're listening to us, and talk to you.